Gute Woche. Gute Woche. The Rebbe Zolkes began the Farbrengen this afternoon that regularly there's an inyan in making a Farbrengen on Shabbos Mevochem, and this is something which was introduced to us by the Frierdiker Rebbe. And if this is something which should be done and is done every month, how much more so is it when it comes to the Shabbos that we bench the month of Shvat? Because in the month of Shvat, we have Yud Shvat, which is the day when the Frierdiker Rebbe was nifter. The Rebbe referred to it with the expression of Asiri Yiya Kodesh, which is an expression in Chumash. The 10th is it's the holy day of Yud Shvat. So it's extremely appropriate to have a Farbrengen on Shabbos Mevochem when we enter this month, the Shabbos that we're blessing this month of the month of Shvat. Especially, it is written in Svarim that every month has its mazel, and every month corresponds to another Shevet. The month of Adar, it is brought in Svarim, corresponds to Shevet Levi, and the month of Shvat corresponds to Yosef. So here we have a very obvious shaykhs between the month of Shvat and the Frierdiker Rebbe, whose name was so that we don't have to wait till we come to the Asiri Yiyah Kodesh, to the 10th of Shvat. This is as we enter the month of Shvat, we right away see an obvious shaykhs to the Frierdiker Rebbe. And on this Shabbos, this is the Shabbos when we are mevorech es HaChodesh, we bench this month. And Rosh Chodesh is in this week, and Rosh Chodesh, which is the head of the month, and gives hashpoah and bracha to the entire month. And now we bench this month. And benching is expression of bracha. It is explained in Chassidus, also stems from the word hamshacha. This brings in all the good into the month of Shvat. All comes from today, from the Shabbos. So it's extremely obvious the shaykhs that this month has to the Frierdiker Rebbe already from the Shabbos Mevochem of Shvat. What is today's Sedra? Today's Sedra we begin with Va'era. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that he has revealed himself to the Yavis. And the pasuk goes on, Va'era, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Al Avram, El Yitzchak, Ve'el Yaakov. If we look into Rashi, right away at the beginning of the Sedra, Rashi comments, Va'era, HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself. Whom did he reveal himself to? El Ha'avos. To the Avos. So the question arises right away. The pasuk goes on saying, Va'era al Avram el Yitzchak ve'el Yaakov. Every child, every Ben Chamish Lemikra knows that if we're talking about Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, we know this is their title. Their title is that they are the Avos. For what need is it for Rashi to explain Va'era, HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself, whom to El Ha'avos? Even without Rashi saying the word El Ha'avos, it is extremely obvious whom we're talking about, that Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov are the Avos. So Rebbe Zolkes went on to explain that the Alter Rebbe, whose Yortzeit was yesterday, Chav Dalet Tevis, 24 days in the month of Tevis. And as we know, the Alter Rebbe by name is known as Shnei Oyer Zalman, and as it is explained, Shnei Oyer, meaning that he was a double light. He was a light, an Oyer in Nigla de Torah, as well as an Oyer in Pnimiyas HaTorah. In Nigla de Torah, the Alter Rebbe is outstanding for being the author of the Shulchan Aruch. And in Pnimiyas HaTorah, his most famous works is the Tanya. And as many Taka refer to him, the Baal HaTanya VaShulchan Aruch. And the Alter Rebbe, as well as in Tanya as in Shulchan Aruch, explains regarding the fulfillment of mitzvahs that the main thing that counts, b'negei fulfilling a mitzvah, is the actual doing the mitzvah. Ha'maisa hu ha'ikar. Kavanas and all good intentions that come along with the mitzvah are extremely important. However, one cannot have the kavanas and all good intentions and he'll lack the physical fulfilling of the mitzvah, then it is not considered that he has done the mitzvah. One cannot have all the kavanas regarding tefillin or any other type of mitzvah, and will say he had all the kavanas. If he physically did not put on tefillin, then it is not considered that he put on tefillin. However, here the Torah in Va'era is telling us an additional step. L'katchila. Va'era is an inyan of re'iyah, seeing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing himself, El Ha'avos, and each and every yid possesses within himself a shayches and part of the avos. Chazal is a famous Chazal in Koyran Avos Ela Shloisha. Whom do we look at as our ancestors? Only the three, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Shvatim were leaders, there were other leaders by Yidden. However, with regard of Avos, the concept of Avos only applies to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Here the Rabbeinu Shalom is telling us, he revealed himself to whom? To Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But why? Rashi is right away adding, because they are our Avos. And whatever the others possess, we as their children inherited. It's not something which just took place whereby HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to three individuals, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's more than that. And this is what Rashi is putting in with the word El Ha'avos. This is where Rashi is putting the whole shaychus, v'kesher, the whole contact, what this has to us, the meaning which it has to us. It is extremely meaningful to us because these people were our avos. And Maisa avos simin labanim. And the Rebbe teaches, Maisa avos simin labanim, whatever has happened with the avos, is a simin and is a source of strength for the banim, for us children. Memela, if there was an inyan of Va'era HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to the avos, the Rebbe has given this koyach to Yidden as well. Because everything which the others possess, we in turn inherited. So the Rebishter Kaviyachol is revealing himself to us Yidden as well. And the Rebishter is revealing himself in a format of re'iyah, of seeing. And here the Rebbe referred to a klal in halacha. There's a halacha, ein eid nasa dayan. Choshen mishpat, if one was a witness to a story, if one witnessed something, Halacha tells us he cannot become a judge in this particular scene which he has witnessed. And what is the interpretation for it? When one is a judge, when one is a shayfet on any particular matter, he gathers his information from various witnesses. And as he gets the picture, the proper and clear picture, and as he finds the proper source and psak in Torah, this is what the ruling he comes out with. However, when one witnessed himself the Maisa, whatever the Maisa may have been, let us take for example, if it was a Maisa Retzach, if he saw one killing another, Chas v'Shalom. If he saw this with his own eyes, with his own Riyah, the Riyah has such a deep accomplishment that he cannot be a fair judge in this case. We know that the inyan of a judge is always to a shayfet, always has to seek for v'shaftu ha'eda, v'hitzilu ha'eda, the Torah tells us. They have to judge. However, at the same time, they always have to look and seek after rescuing the individuals involved in this particular case. When one was himself a witness to the case, and he himself saw exactly what has happened, he cannot take a fair stand to the case. Why? This is the deep impact which Re'iyah has on him. Visualizing it with one's own eyes, though we know like Tehei Shmi Gdoila Miriya, and when one relates, he gives a pure and perfect description of whatever has happened. How good of a description one will relate to us, it still cannot have the same impact as if one physically saw it himself. And here the Torah is telling us that the Rabbeinu Shalom says, Va'era el ha'avos. He has revealed himself in a format of re'iyah to whom? To the avos. However, this step of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to the avos, this has given koyach to us Yidden as well to have an access to the Rabbeinu Shalom in a format of re'iyah, of seeing him kaviyachol. And this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe complained. Lama harayisa lama zeh, as we read at the end of last week's Sedra. Said, Rabbeinu Shalom, you have made it worse for the Yidden. And here Rabbeinu Shalom is addressing himself to Moshe Rabbeinu and is telling him, Ve'era al Avraham al Yitzchak vel Yankov, I've revealed myself to the Avos, Bekeil Shaddai, Ushmi Hashem lo nadaiti lahem. And as Rashi explains, HaKadosh Baruch Hu expressed himself, Chaval al da'avdim v'lo mishtakchen. It's a shod, it's a shame that there were such great individuals who are gone, they're no more here, and they can no longer be found. In other words, the Avos were not meharer, did not think back after what I said. As Rashi cites all the examples, what happened with Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they never complained. And you, Moshe Rabbeinu, are coming right away to complain. So as the Rebbe learned this afternoon, by the Rebbeinu Shalom saying this to Moshe Rabbeinu, he elevated Moshe to a yet higher madrege, as he was until now. The Rebbe criticized him for complaining, so the Rebbe told him, Chaval al da'avdim v'lo mishtakchen, and by this Moshe reached to a yet higher madrege. However, the koyach which Moshe had to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim was due to the fact that Moshe himself was also a ben Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yankov. And being that Moshe was a ben Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, so this va'eira el ha'avos was an esinas koyach to Moshe as well, which helped. This gave Moshe the power. He should be able to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. And the Rebbe spoke nowadays as well. Each and every one of us have opportunities to take Yidden out of Mitzrayim, out of the spiritual Mitzrayim. Who gives us this koyach to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim? How do we have such a koyach to approach a Yid and get him out of the spiritual Mitzrayim which he is in and elevate the Yid? This is given to us through this va'eira el ha'avis, being that each and every one of us is a ben Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yankov. So we possess this high koyach which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given to us by revealing himself to the Avis, and the Avis in turn have inherited all these koyches to each and every one of us Yidden, and by doing so, we now have a koyach to reach out to other Yidden, to those who are on a spiritual Mitzrayim, reach out to those Yidden and take them and bring them into a geula, into a level of geula from their Mitzrayim. And the Rebbe referred, there's an expression in Tana Devei Eliyahu, that every Yid should strive and say, Masa yagiu ma'isai la'maisa avoisa Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. When will my actions and my maisim reach to the actions of our Avis, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov? Though on one hand we know that the greatest person by Yidden was Moshe Rabbeinu, and from here we see, and this is something which is brought in Nigla the Torah, from here we see that everybody should strive to reach to the level of Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. This shows us that the others were yet greater than Moshe. But expressed himself, being that we hope constantly for the coming of Eliyahu Navi. And this is a saying, quotation from Tana Devei Eliyahu. So when the Eliyahu Navi will come, we will approach him and we will ask him, how is it that he said that every Yid should strive to reach to the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov? Because from here we see that Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov were greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Being that today is the day after Chavdalah Tevis. Chavdalah Tevis was on Friday, 24 days in the month of Tevis. And this is the Yortzeit of the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya v'Shulchan Aruch. Though the expression Erev Shabbos can apply not only literally to Friday, it can apply to the whole week. As we know, in Halacha we find that if one finds something nice, sees something nice on any given day of the week, there's a machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, if he can go ahead and prepare earlier, if he comes across something bekovedik, something which is suitable for Shabbos. However, the terminology of Erev Shabbos is usually limited mamish to Erev Shabbos. When we say Erev Shabbos, we really mean Friday. We don't mean Tuesday, we don't mean Wednesday, and so forth. And in the Emes, we find by the Lechem Apanim, we find, which was brought in the Beis HaMikdash, Chazal tell us a greatness about the Lechem Apanim, that when the Lechem Apanim was taken away, when the new Lachmim came on the following Shabbos, it was as fresh as if it was just brought on today. What do we derive from this? That there's an inyan in having something fresh right away, l'kavet Shabbos. When is something real fresh? Naturally, not if it was prepared early part of the week. This was a nest in the lechem apanim. But generally, something which is prepared on Friday is fresh and because it's closer to Shabbos. So we see that the real concept of Erev Shabbos really applies to Friday. There's a halach in Shulchan Aruch, which the Rebbe Zalman quoted today, he quotes it many times, that if one runs on Erev Shabbos, and while running, he causes some damage, the halach in Shulchan Aruch tells us that he's potter. Why? Because he's running for a Dvar Mitzvah, he's running for Shabbos preparations. And again, this can only apply on Friday. If we see a person running on Sunday or on Monday, the Rebbe says, we don't know what he's running for. He may be running for a Dvar Mitzvah, he may be running to earn a couple of cents, or maybe running to earn a couple of dollars, or maybe a couple of $1 million. But it's not necessarily that his running is geared, that he's up to do something for Shabbos. However, Erev Shabbos Shulchan Aruch tells us that if one runs on Erev Shabbos, and causes some sort of a damage, he's potter because it has a shaychus to Shabbos. So Memela, this day of yesterday is extremely, Chavdal Tevis here was not far away from Shabbos, it was extremely close to Shabbos. It was on Friday. And if we look into this week's Sedra, and not only in the Sedra in general, but if we look into the Sedra in the Parsha of Shishi, which has a shaychus to Friday, and we know the famous instruction from the Frierdiker Rebbe to learn the shiurim of Chitas, and expression of the Alter Rebbe, leben mit der Zeit, to live with the time, and it is interpreted meaning living with Parshas HaShavua. So if we look into yesterday's Parsha, the Parsha begins right away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, V'samti pedus bein ami bein amecha. He will put a pedus, a sign, a divider between ami and amecha. The expression of pedus has a very, very obvious shaychus to the Alter Rebbe. Because we all know that when the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, he was in the midst of saying Tehillim, and where was he up to? He was up to the word Pada B'Shalom. So Pada and Pedus, which are very obvious in their relation, has an open shaychus to yesterday's parsha. And we all know what the Rebbe Nishma said, the Rebbe Rashab, that the real Hafatas Hamayonis, the real spreading of Chasidus, began after Peterburg. What does he mean by after Peterburg? He means after the Alter Rebbe was released from prison. So after the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, after the inyan of Pedus, Pada B'Shalom, that is when the real spreading of Chasidus began with a much stronger strength and power as it was until then. And the emes is, Rebbe goes ahead, that in yesterday's Shir Tillim as well, we also find a very strong shaychus to the inyan of Hilula. The Shir Tillim, as Tehillim is divided according to the month, Chavdalad, we say Halil. The kapitlach which are recited in Halil. And not only part of Halil, half Halil as we say in Rosh Chodesh, but the whole Halil, the entire Halil. Halil, again, corresponds with the concept of Hilula. Hilula has the word Halil within it. So again, we have an open and obvious shaychus from the day of Chavdal Tevis, which is the Yom Hilula, the Yartzeit day. A Yartzeit is referred to as a Hilula from the Alter Rebbe, to the Tehillim which is recited on that day, as Tehillim is divided in accordance to the month. The Tehillim which we say then is a Tehillim which has Halil in it. We do not make a bracha on this Halil, and normally we know that on Halil a bracha could be made, and should be made. Rabbi added on, we find in Chassidus interpretations, according to Chabad, we make a bracha only on Tefillin Shel Yad, and on the Shel Rosh we do not make a bracha. Or furthermore, when it comes to Rashi's Tefillin, we make a bracha. However, on the Tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, we do not make a bracha at all. So Chassidus explains why is it that we do not make a bracha on this? Because it's a yet higher madrege than an inyan that requires a bracha. It's such a high madrege that a bracha would be some sort of like a limitation to make. If we were to make a bracha on it, it would be like a limited inyan. And here we're talking about an inyan which is yet higher than being limited in the frame of a bracha. So the same is this Halal which is recited yesterday, which is the Halal as we say it in the Tehillim, in the Yom of Chav Daled. This is a yet higher madrege than the Halal which we recite when we make a bracha over Halal. Again, at the end of yesterday's parsha, which concludes, in order to tell about the greatness of the Rebishter b'chol ha'aretz, in the entire world, all over. This also corresponds with the Alter Rebbe, because when the Alter Rebbe was let out of prison, there's a famous Igeras HaKodesh which the Alter Rebbe writes. Alter Rebbe writes in the letter which he wrote immediately being released from prison, he writes, Higdil v'hifli Hashem la'asosime ba'aretz. That the Rebishter went out of his way and commemorated the tremendous nisim. And it is something which was even seen la'einei hagoyim. Something which not only Yidden are well aware of these miracles that happened by releasing the Alter Rebbe, even non-Jews, and not only average non-Jews, but even Sarim, ministers in that time, Russian ministerium, everyone is aware of the great nisim which happened to the Alter Rebbe. And this is something which is the same idea as Laman Sapir Shmi B'chol Haaretz. So here we have how the whole Inyan of the Alter Rebbe is reflected in the Parsha Chumash, which has a shaykhs to the Alter Rebbe, because this is the Parsha which was learned on the day of his Yom Elul. As mentioned earlier, the Alter Rebbe is the author of the Tanya and the Shulchan Aruch, known for being the author of these Svarim. Shulchan Aruch begins with a saying of Yehuda ben Tema, a quotation from the famous Tana Yehuda ben Tema. What does he tell us? Havei as kanemer, to be strong as a leopard. Rotz katzvi, run as fast as a deer. Gibber ka'ari, be as strong as a lion. La'asais chetzayin avicha shebeshamayim, to fulfill the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kalkanesha. As fast as an eagle. And this is this quotation of Yehuda ben Tema, which is, these are opening words of the Shulchan Aruch. Comes even before the halachas of Birchas HaShachar, coming before all the halachas. In other words, the main and key guide for a Yid to be successful in observing the Shulchan Aruch is by carrying this message of Yehuda ben Tema with him. The Rebbe says the emes is that in the Sefer Tanya we have a Rosh Tevis for the same idea. First comes the introduction, the Shablat, the cover page to the Tanya. Then comes the Hakdameh, which was all written by the Alter Rebbe himself. Then the Alter Rebbe begins with the word Tanya. Tanya, spelled Tov, Nun, Yud, Aleph, is composed of a Rosh Tevis, abbreviates Tema, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. The Nun stands for Namer, a leopard. Tells us, As kanemer, be as firm as a leopard. The Yud is Yehuda, and the Aleph is Omer. So here we have a remez in the opening word of Tanya. For the same opening, it corresponds to the same opening as the Shulchan Aruch, which reflects, quoting Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. What Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says, Havei as kanemer kal kanesher gibber kari rotz katzvi, the very same idea the Alter Rebbe put into the Tanya as well, but the Tanya it is beremes in the Rosh Tevis, but it is also the very same idea. Tanya being the main source and guide in Pnimis HaTorah, and Shulchan Aruch is the guide Al Pi Nigla de Torah, and here we have how both the Shulchan Aruch for Pnimis HaTorah as well as the Shulchan Aruch for Nigla de Torah both begin with the same idea. Later in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe Zilgazunzain also referred to an Inyan which says came out to speak about already at times, but he didn't mention it this year. And the Alter Rebbe in the Igeras HaKodesh, in the various letters which we have from the Alter Rebbe in the last Chelik of Tanya, we find a very big stress on mitzvahs tzedakah. In fact, the Rebbe says it's one of the miftzayim is the Inyan of mitzvah tzedakah. However, recent years, the Rebbe has introduced a magvis, a campaign to give in to the Rebbe tzedakah a magvis, which the Rebbe refers to it as a magvis of Yutas Kislev Chanukah. Around the time between Yutas Kislev and Chanukah, funds which go for tzedakah, the Rebbe distributes for various tzedakahs. The Rebbe says he finds an opportune time today to remind. The Rebbe says most of the people have already contributed towards this fund. However, if there are some individuals who have not contributed towards the magvis of Yitzhak Kislev and Chanukah, it can still be accomplished. And the Rebbe said, now we are already going out of the month of Tevis. Today we are benching Shvat. But on one hand, we are still in the month of Tevis. Chanukah extends into Tevis. So Memela, if Chanukah extends into Tevis, the last days of Chanukah are still in the month of Tevis, so while we are still in the month of Tevis, we can still fulfill inyanim which have a shaychus to Chanukah. And therefore, it is still an appropriate time for those who have not taken part in the magvis of Yutas Kislev Chanukah to still do so. And while talking about the greatness of tzedakah, Rabbi said, one may say, why should I go ahead and give tzedakah? And through tzedakah, become associated with the will of the Rabbeim and so forth, which is their will and their desire for us to express the giving and fulfill the giving of tzedakah. The Alter Rebbe tells us right away in Perek Hey and Tanya that there is no greater association than being associated with one through the learning of his Torah. So one will say he will go ahead and learn Torah, learn the Torah of the Frierdiker Rebbe, learn the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, and while learning their Torahs, he will become closely associated with them. Why is there a need for him to go ahead and give tzedakah? The same, and he'll base it on another Chazal. Chazal tell us that Torah is yikarahi mipninim. Torah is more dear than pearls. So why should he go ahead and give something which is an expression of a gashmiistic thing, which is an expression of pearls and gold, which reflect gashmiistic inyanim? He can go ahead and give this person something which is obviously much dearer and much chashiva than pninim, yikarahi mipninim, which is Torah. And therefore he will go ahead and learn with this person Torah. At the time the one is in need of a physical assistance, material assistance, and assistance of tzedakah, he will substitute it and say he will give him Torah. Torah obviously is more worth than tzedakah. Torah is higher than money. So why should he go ahead and give him money? And to such an extent, one may make a cheshm. He will say, if that person is rejecting what he's offering him a great inyan. He's offering him something which is so great as Torah, and there is nothing which equals the greatness of Torah. And this person is rejecting it. So this person can be considered a shaita. And Chazal tell us, shaita asola rachem alav. We're not supposed to have rachmanis on a shaita. Now naturally, this is a false calculation. When one is in need of tzedakah, the first thing we have to do is assist him with tzedakah. And when there's a proper time to give, certain times which call for the giving of tzedakah, we have to give tzedakah in those times. And when we have to reach out through the association of Torah, which Torah is a strong association, as Alter Rebbe explains in the Perek Hey of Tanya. This has its proper time when this has to be done. However, one definitely does not have to conflict with the other. And when there's a call for the giving of tzedakah, it literally has to be fulfilled in the literal physical giving tzedakah. It came to learn a Rashi in this week's Sedra, or an inyan, which, as the Rebbe says, requires an interpretation from Rashi, and Rashi does not interpret it. Rebbe raised the question regarding the Makkah of Tzfardeya. We read in the Torah about 10 different plagues which were brought on the Mitzrayim. If we look through Chumash, as it's discussed in the Sedres, and we look through Rashi, we will notice that each Makkah lasted for an entire week. Then there was a 3-week span which Moshe Rabbeinu gave Pari, gave him a chance to let the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. And if the Makkah came again, that is when Pari again refused to let the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. There is one exception, obviously, to these 10 Makkahs. Naturally, Makkah's Peiros did not last a week. Makkah's Peiros lasted the night of Pesach. But regarding the other 9 Makkahs, there is also an exception, and that is regarding the Makkah of Tzfardeya. If we look into Kapitel Ches, before Chamishi, we find Vayema Moshe LaParoi. Moshe is addressing Paroi and he's telling him, L'mosei ati l'chol avadecha, when should we take away the tzvardim? And Moshe and Paroi came to an agreement. Vayema l'mocha, told him right away tomorrow. Obviously, this makkah did not last for a week. This ended right away tomorrow. What happened with the tzvardim? Rak ba'yoyer tisha'arna. Where were they left? They were left in the rivers. Again, something. If we look through the psukim, the Rebbe quoted, we find that the tzvardim the frogs did not disappear totally. What happened to them? Rak ba'yoyer tisha'arna. They were left in the rivers. Obviously, they should have disappeared totally. For example, any other makkah which stopped. So what happened was, the Indian, this specific makkah, totally disappeared from the area of Mitzrayim. Here we find something different. What do we see here? Rak ba'yoyer tisha'arna. Why is this? The emes, there are other mefarshim, other commentaries on Chumash, that discuss regarding the tzvardim what has taken place regarding the tzvardim. The question also arises, was it something which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created specifically for the Makkah of Mitzrayim? Or was it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just brought a gathering of tzvardim from all over the world here to Mitzrayim? Naturally, if we learn, for example, about the other Makkahs, when the Rebbe brought all the Chayas, it's not something that the Rebbe created Chayas specifically for the Makkah. Only thing is, the Rebbe made a gathering of all the Chayas that should be spread all over Mitzrayim at the time. When the Makkah was over, the Rebbe did not destroy them. The Rebbe just spread them again as they were before. Here the question arises, was it that the Tzfardim were created specifically for this Makkah or not? If we look into Rashi, Rashi tells us, Vatal ha-tzvardeya. So Rashi says, Tzvardeya achas hoisa. There was one Tzvardeya, only one, a single tzvardeya, one frog. V'hayu makin hoisa, and they would hit it, and this is how it multiplied into many, many tzvardim. And Rashi says this is a medrash. However, Rashi goes on in this specific Rashi on Pasuk Beis, Kapitel Ches Pasuk Beis. Rashi goes on and says a Pashat Pshat, but strange enough, Rashi brings the Pashat Pshat after he interpreted the medrash. He quoted the medrash. So from this we see that the medrash is the Iker Pshat in Rashi, because based on the klal that Rashi usually brings the drash first. Rashi usually brings the pirush that's closest to Pshat first. So in this case, it is a medrash that is closest to Pshat, and that is why Rashi brings this first. Anyways, the Rebbe was discussing the questions here regarding the Tzvardeya, and the Rebbe did not finalize with a teretz, just left it open. Why is it that this Makkah did not last as long as all other Makkahs? And why is it also that when the Makkah concluded, it was left by Yo'er, it was left in the waters, and it didn't go away totally from Mitzrayim?
Did it give another chance? Did it give another chance?
Yes. Also in the Farbrengen, later in the Farbrengen, Rebbe spoke regarding the Pegisha, which is taking place this weekend, and the greatness of it, giving people an opportunity to familiarize themselves with Yiddishkeit. But Rebbe said, above that, Rebbe said, he's extreme. What brought his attention, what he noted was the title of the topic of the Pegisha, of this year's Pegisha. And that is Jewish experience. Pardon? Jewish possibilities. Thank you. The Rebbe says it is a very, very proper title. And it means, actually there's a deep meaning in it. Jewish possibilities means that there are the possibilities to bring Yiddishkeit to each and every Yid. And this is what the Pegisha is all about, to acquaint those who are still strange with Yiddishkeit and bring them closer to Yiddishkeit, and they in turn will utilize their effort and their influence on others, and so on and so forth, until ultimately we'll reach out to all Yidden. Jewish possibilities, meaning it has a shaykhus to each and every Yid. When we're talking about Eretz Yisrael, it is referred to as Eretz Yisrael not because it is a country where Yidden live in. It is a country that Yidden have a shaykhus to. This is the Yiddish country. More than the fact that Yidden just reside there. The same thing we're talking, Jewish possibilities, it means the possibility of bringing Yiddishkeit to each and every Yid. And that's what Jewish possibility stands for. He said he would very much like to have a hemshech of this Farbrengen to the Pkisha, and therefore he will give mashke from the Farbrengen, based on what Chazal tell us, G'doilo legima shemekareves, drinking brings about to closeness. He will give mashke from this Farbrengen to be distributed at the sessions from the Pegisha. And al pi halacha, being that he's giving the mashke on Shabbos, the mashke has to be distributed partially at least on Shabbos as well during the Farbrengen. However, the remainder of the mashke should be distributed at the Pegisha sessions. Also, another inyan which is taking place tonight is, in fact, that is why we are here, not across the street, because across the street there is a Malava Malke of an organization which is called Tze'etzoyim of the Alter Rebbe. Tze'etzoyim of the Alter Rebbe literally means descendants of the Alter Rebbe. Families, people who stem back, whose yichus stem back from the Alter Rebbe. And interestingly, there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people throughout the world who are descendants of the Alter Rebbe, through the Alter Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe, and so forth. And there is a similar organization in Eretz Yisrael which is called an Igud HaTze'etzoyim, an organization of descendants of the Alter Rebbe, and there is one here as well, and they're having a Malava Malke across the street tonight. B'shayches to this Malava Malke, the Rebbe said he would say a vote. We say in Birchas HaTorah, which we recite daily every morning, in the Harevna, we express ourselves V'tze'etzoyinu V'tze'etzoy kol amcha beis Yisrael. We bless that we are asking in Tefillah from the Rebbeinu Shalom that Torah should remain fluent in our mouths, Anachnu v'tze'etzoyinu, in our children, v'tze'etzoy kol amcha beis Yisrael, should all be Yodei Shemecha, should all be well versed in your name, should all be Loindei Teirascha Lishma. There are other nuschos that have it a little bit different here. V'niya Anachnu v'tze'etzoyinu, v'tze'etzoy tze'etzoyinu, v'tze'etzoy kol amcha beis Yisrael. What is the difference? They explain as follows. We're asking from the Rebbeinu Shalom that ourselves, our children, and our children's children should all be Loimdei Serasecha. Because there's a klal, HaTorah mechazeres alachsan yeshalah. That's what the Gemara tells us. When there are 3 generations learning Torah, Torah will remain there. Therefore, if we're asking from the Rebbeinu Shalom for ourselves, we're asking for Tzetzoeinu, our children, and we're also asking for Tzetzoeinu for our grandchildren, so it is already to be hoped that all future generations as well will also remain learning the Torah. Being that the Alter Rebbe did not enter the word Tzetzoeinu into the Siddur, and we only say Tzetzoeinu, this in itself shows us that the Alter Rebbe learns that by expressing ourselves Tzetzoeinu, we are mispalel not only for our own children, but for all the generations to come. We're asking from the Rebbeinu Shalom that for all the generations to come, that will come out of us, should all be well-versed, Yedei Shemecha, V'loimdei Serascha, should all have a shaychus to Torah. In fact, according to the Alter Rebbe, Rebbe says it is more. We are including everything into the word Tzetzoeinu. We don't have to say ourselves, our children and grandchildren, and then come on to a cloud of Torah mechazeres alachsan yishallah. It is all built into this one word. We're saying Tzedzo'enu, and by referring to Tzedzo'enu, it refers to all our descendants for all the many, many generations to come. And it says it's a gewaldige Wort. We see that the word Tzedzo'ah encompasses, carries within itself not only the first generation, but all the generations to come. The Mela, when we're talking about people who are descendants of the Alter Rebbe, though most of the Tzedzoyim that are around today are in the 7th generation from the Alter Rebbe, still we see that they carry the same title of Tzedzoyim as those that were in earlier generations or those that will be in future generations. In other words, the same closeness to the founder of the Mishpacha, to the Alter Rebbe, it is all included in this word, V'tzetzainu. This is how we see how the Alter Rebbe teaches V'tzetzainu. Therefore the Rebbe said, it is something very great that the Tzedzoyim of this generation carry the same strength as a Tzedzoah, as a descendant of the Alter Rebbe, as those even from the first generation of the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe went to the extent of saying as those that Mamish the Alter Rebbe's children, the son is part of his father. His son is considered a Tzedzoah. And those who are now in the 7th generation from the Alter Rebbe, and those in generations to come, are all considered Tzedzoim from the Alter Rebbe. Therefore the Rebbe said he would also send mashke to this Mlava Malka of descendants of the Alter Rebbe. And something special to the mashke is the fact that this mashke originated, the Rebbe says he got it here, which Chassidim in Russia sent him, Chassidim of Achurim Masach HaBasel, from behind the Iron Curtain. And these are Chassidim, that people that up to date, they're fulfilling each and every mitzvah, is bound with literal Mesiras Nefesh. So there's a tremendous chshivas to this type of a mashke, and when this is distributed at an occasion, whether it is the Pekisha or it is the Mlava Malka as well, the Rebbe gave for the Mlava Malka of Tzach, which will take place next Motzei Shabbos, also mashke to be this mashke which originated from Russia and came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave it to them today. This is extremely chashav zach, and he blessed all these occasions that they should all be B'atzlacha Rebbe.